We're going to go through a banded hamstring curl dynamic isometric exercise. So for this exercise, we're going to take our hamstring curl movement and take it through its full range of motion for 1 rep. So if this was my starting position, I want to start here and I'm going to slowly finish with the knee completely open. If I break this position into 3 positions, okay, position 1 being up here to about here, position 2 from there to about here, and then position 3, this last portion, I will want to try and spend a bit of time in all those 3 positions for this exercise. Now the intent is also to provide as much movement variability and challenge the hip and hamstring in many ways possible with this particular exercise. So movement variabilities that you can explore with this will be hip rotation, so internal, external rotation. In the first exercise I show you, it'll be from this position. So I'll be rotating in this position right here. And then other variables you can explore is knee rotation, internally, externally rotating the knee, and even a bit of ankle movement will also probably change things. And that will change how the tissues on the hamstrings are being challenged and how you're training them. So for the first demonstration, I'm going to attach a band to the bottom of the post and I'm going to lie onto my fronts. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just hook my foot through the band as so, and then turn around. Now what I'm going to do is passively bring my knee into complete flexion. So I'll take my hand over my leg and then close the knee as best as possible and then assess from here. What I want to know is that when I take my hand away, I can feel the tension. The band has enough tension to challenge me and pull my knee into extension or opening up the knee. So this feels like a good position for me to start. So I'm going to be here, and then what I'm going to do is contract the hamstring, close the knee as best as possible. And then once I start to release my hand, I'm going to apply those movements I mentioned. So I can play with hip rotation. So here I'm drawing the ankle out to the side via rotation of the hip, bringing it back in. Trying my best to stay in that zone 1. I can also apply the knee rotation as I'm moving. And I'm also taking my time. I'm moving slow to assess how it feels, how it challenges various areas of the hamstring group. And then as I start to fatigue, I'm slowly starting to move to zone 2. And if I feel the tension on the band is easing off, I can shuffle forwards a little bit more to increase that tension. And then I keep going, exploring all those movements, trying to work as many different areas as possible. When one area gets fatigued, I try to explore somewhere else. I try to use another area that I can that's not completely fatigued yet. Using all those variables in combination, and the same as I'm fatiguing, the knee opens up a bit more. If I feel tension eases off, I can shuffle forwards a little bit more, and then I'm continuing here. Slow moving, exploring all movement variables I can around the ankle, knee and hip joint for this exercise. So that is an example of performing this exercise in a prone position, so lying on your fronts, and that biases the hip, not completely but somewhat into some hip extension or keeping the hip neutral. Now you can challenge the same exercise with the hip in different positions. So what I've done here is I've attached a band up to a pull-up bar and I'm going to this time lie on my fronts. And then with this exercise here, what I want to do is loop my foot through the band again, but this time I'm going to make sure I secure this band a bit better. Okay, and then from here I'm going to lie back, and the exercise will be to pull the knee to a degree into hip flexion, I can choose how much I want. Then from here, close the knee as best as possible. And then I will start the exercise. So I release the tension. And then from here, like I said, I can explore. So with this one, I have another variable, which is also the freedom to move the knee itself out to the side into abduction or move it in. That combined with that hip rotation as well, that combined with the knee rotation will change how things feel. So that's an extra added variable that we can play with here, is in this position being able to move the knee in and out to the side, combined with those other variables I mentioned, rotating the hip as you're resisting the band. And then if you feel there's not enough tension with this one here, same as before, lean back a little bit more as you work through. Think about moving slow and controlled as well. And then same as before, as that tension eases off, I get into zone 3, say, I don't feel it's too challenging anymore, and I just need to move back a little bit more to get that tension back onto that band. So this is another alternative of how you can perform this exercise, biasing the hip into a degree of hip flexion as well. Now, there's one more variable I'll show you, and this is going to be, again, lying on our front, but a little progression from the first setup I showed you. So optional is to actually have a ball to kind of like one of these med balls to support this whole area, and it makes the exercise a bit more comfortable and allows me to kind of also focus on what I'm trying to work with regards to the hamstring. So for this one, again, with this I want to get a good secure onto the band for this one, so I'm going to double band around my ankle. And then from here, I'm going to lie down onto my front. So I'm on my front. I can play with my distance to get the tension of the band right, but then what I'm going to do is passively close my knee. Then from here, think about creating that tension around the hamstring to hold this position, and then I'll slowly release. And then again, I can play with all these movements here. So this is slightly different. I'm on my front. I can have the knee down a little bit more into flexion as well. And I'm exploring the same thing, internal, external rotation of the hip, knee rotation, ankle rotation, flexion extension. As I start to fatigue, once again, I can move forwards with the ball and then continue until I get to the end of my sets. So those are a few examples of how you can perform this exercise. Just to recap, you can play with hip rotation. If you're lying on your back, you could play with moving the knee out and into the sides. And you can also play with knee rotation, which is also very important, because by how we change knee rotation with hip rotation will very much change how you feel various areas of your hamstrings are being engaged and challenged. So feel free to explore these variables and other ideas you might have for this particular exercise.